If every factory worker in the world went on strike tomorrow, the economy would grind to a halt in hours. But what if every mother, caregiver, cleaner, and cook stopped working? Society wouldn't just freeze. It would collapse entirely within days. Yet for centuries, mainstream economic textbooks has treated this work, what scholars call social reproduction or life-making labor, as if it doesn't exist. It has no price tag, no wage, and zero weight in gross domestic product. How did the most crucial work for human survival become invisible, unpaid, and often expected for free? To answer that, let's look at the work of scholar and activist Silvia Federici and her groundbreaking book, Caliban and the Witch. Standard history tells us that capitalism was born through primitive accumulation, a fancy term coined by Karl Marx for the process where rich lords fenced off shared peasant lands, a process called enclosure. Peasants were forced off the land and driven into cities to work for wages, just to buy back the food they used to grow themselves. Federici agreed with Marx, but she noticed a massive blind spot. Capitalism didn't just enclose common land. It enclosed women's bodies. Before capitalism, in feudal village life, work was organized around communal subsistence. While hierarchy certainly existed, men and women both worked the commons together. Production, making things, and reproduction, raising people, weren't separated into work and home. When the commons were destroyed, mostly men entered the wage system. But women were left with a brutal choice: depend on a wage-earning man or starve. To enforce this new division of labor, the ruling class needed to break women's independence. Enter the witch hunts. Between the 15th and 17th centuries, tens of thousands of women across Europe and the Americas were tortured and executed. History books often dismiss this as religious hysteria. Federici shows it was state-sponsored terrorism. The primary targets were midwives, herbalists, elderly women, and community leaders. Women who held knowledge about birth control, communal living, and bodily autonomy. By terrorizing women, the state destroyed communal solidarity and stripped women of control over their reproductive choices. The result? Women were redefined not as workers, but as housewives, caretakers, childbearers, and house cleaners. Crucially, capital rebranded this uncompensated labor as a natural female attribute, or an act of love. But Federici calls it for what it really is: a hidden subsidy for capital. Think about it. Employers don't pay workers enough to cover the daily costs of feeding them, cooking their meals, washing their clothes, or raising the next generation of laborers. That labor is provided for free, at home, mostly by women. This isn't just 16th century history. In the 1980s, Federici taught in Nigeria, where she witnessed International Monetary Fund structural adjustment programs firsthand. When international banks forced developing nations to cut public spending on healthcare, housing, and education in exchange for loans, who picked up the slack? Women. When a government cuts spending on public daycare, elder care, or mental health services, that labor doesn't vanish. It gets pushed back into the home, falling onto unpaid shoulders. Modern austerity relies on the assumption that women's unpaid care work is an infinite, stretchable shock absorber for the market. Silvia Federici's work cuts through the myth that capitalism is built solely on free markets and innovation. At its core, it relies on a hidden foundation of unpaid, life-making labor. Understanding Federici means realizing that fighting for economic justice isn't just about demanding higher wages at the workplace. It's about recognizing, valuing, and reclaiming the work that keeps humanity alive in the first place. As Federici famously wrote, "They say it is love. We say it's unwaged work."